All right. So, so we have this constant contradiction of Israel being told that they should be super grateful because God has gotten rid of all of the enemies around, and a constant, similarly constant sense that the enemies are still, there are still enemies in the land that that Israel will have to confront. All right. And so it came to pass
That's a
after many days.
If he got
It
rid
sure
of them,
is. It sure is a contradiction, Sandy. And you know, as I've mentioned many times, you know, over the course of our work on this book, right? The Bible is comfortable, right, with contradictions. The readers of the Bible are not so comfortable with contradictions, and that includes not just modern readers, not just us, right, but the rabbis too, right? Traditional exegetes are not happy with contradictions in the Bible, and so there's a lot of exegesis that aims to harmonize, right? Tries to explain away the contradictions. I actually think, you know, that it's interesting to live in that tension, right? That there is, on one hand, yes, you know, there's a great, we should have a great deal of gratitude, so to speak, for what has been given to us. And at the same time, right, we still have, there's a lot of things that that are obstructing us to being where we really want to be. And so I think that, you know, and I am also personally comfortable with the idea that preserving traditions is more important than it is to harmonize everything and make everything palatable to, you know, to readers of a particular era, right? Because eras change, things change, ideologies change, and even though maybe human nature never really changes, right? But that ideologies change and ideas change, and we need to have all of our traditions to be able to deal with the various realities that confront us. So that being said, right, when the Lord had given rest unto Israel from all their enemies round about, and Joshua was old and well stricken in years, right? So he'd come into his days is the idiom here, ba yamim. He's come into his days, and that is, if I recall, that's a idiom that is used for Abraham as well when Abraham reaches his old age. That Joshua called for all Israel, for their elders and for their heads and for their judges and for their officers, and said unto them, I am old, right? Or literally, I have become old, right? Ani zakanti, bati vayamim. I'm well stricken in years. He basically repeats in the first person what the narrator said about him in the third person in the previous verse. And ye, right, all of you have seen all that the Lord your God hath done unto all these nations because of you. For the Lord your God, he it is that hath fought for you, right? Just as in Egypt, right? God did the military heavy lifting. Behold, I have allotted unto you for an inheritance according to your tribes these nations that remain from the Jordan, with all the nations that I have cut off, even unto the great sea, going down toward the going down of the sun, right? The Mediterranean, where the sun goes down, right, to the west. So very interesting, right? That on one hand, God says you have done it to all these nations, right? And at the same time, God is really leaning into this contradiction, right? That there are nations that remain, right? There are nations that I've cut off and nations that remain. And the Lord your God, he shall thrust them out from before you and drive them from out of your sight, and ye shall possess their land, as the Lord your God spoke unto you. Therefore, be very courageous to keep and to do all that is written in the book of the law of Moses. All right. And I think you may remember, right, from the very beginning of the book of Joshua, right? There's been this emphasis even on Joshua, studying the law of Moses, right? That this is what really matters. That the military aspects, right, are in some ways not really the challenge, right? That God is going to do the heavy military lifting, and what the people have to do, right, is to obey the Torah. And if they obey the Torah, then God will take care of them in a military sense, right? But it's going to take a great deal of courage, right? The chazaktem, right? Be strong, the chazaktem, in order to keep and to do all that is written in the Torah of Moses, right? That ye not turn aside therefrom to the right hand or to the left. That ye come not among these nations, right? Very interesting, right? That these that remain among you neither make mention of the name of their gods, nor cause to swear by them, neither serve them, nor worship them, but cleave unto the Lord your God, as ye have done unto this day. Wherefore the Lord hath driven out from before you great nations and mighty, but as for you, no man hath stood against you until this day. All right. So it's the challenge here, according to Joshua, appears not to be the military challenge, right, but the spiritual challenge, right? That these nations that are going to be here, you don't want to hang out with them. You don't want to make friends with them. You don't want to, I think they'll probably, I don't know if it says it explicitly, right? But, the idea would be don't marry them, right? Don't intermarry with them, because then you are putting yourself in a position, right, of beginning to worship their gods instead of cleaving unto Adonai. Okay, so one man of you hath chased 1,000. For the Lord your God, he is it that fought for you, and he spoke unto you. Take good heed, therefore, unto yourselves, that ye love the Lord your God. Right, and this is, of course, right, sounding very Deuteronomic, right? What do we do in Deuteronomy, right? Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, right? So here it is, right? So take good heed, right? The nishmartem, right? Guard yourselves, right? Lenafshotechem, and not like on yourselves, right? On your souls, on your breath, right? La'ahava et Adonai Elohechem, right? That you should be loving of your God. Else, if ye do in any wise go back and cleave unto the remnant of these nations, even these that remain among you, and make marriages with them, and go in among them, and they to you, know for a certainty that the Lord your God will no more drive these nations from out of your sight, but they shall be a snare and a trap unto you, and a scourge in your sides, and pricks in your eyes, until ye perish from off this good land, which the Lord your God hath given you. Right? So it's a very stark choice here. Right? And behold, this day I am going the way of all the earth. V'hinei anochi holech hayom b'derech kol haaretz. Right? I am no different than anyone else. Right? I am about to die. Consider ye therefore in all your hearts and in all your soul, that not one thing hath failed of all the good things which the Lord your God spoke concerning you. All are come to pass unto you. Not one thing has failed thereof. Very interesting, right? Again, we have this emphasis on the completeness, right, of what God has done, right? Yet there remains this potential for snares and traps, right? That, which I think requires a little bit of thought. But again, we see here also, right, this echo of the Shema in verse 14, right? If you're following along in Hebrew, it's right after the semicolon. Vidatem, and you know, right? You have known, or you will know, bechol levavchem, in all of your hearts, right? Ubchol nafshechem, right? Nafshechem, in all of your soul, that God did not fail to do any of the things, all the good things that God said about you, right? It's all come as it should. Go ahead, Sandy.
And yet for those who look at all the bad things,
yes,
then this is nonsense.
Well, I think it's very interesting, right? I mean, there certainly is a lot of good, right, that happened, right, in terms of God's relationship with the Israelites. But you're pointing out something very important, right? That
absolutely. He's in the real estate business, and he's giving the land and the murder. Oh my goodness! I don't see how anyone can believe that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's an interesting set of issues, right? So I think someone else has joined us. Let's see here. Naomi. Nice to have you, Naomi. So glad you're here. You're not on my screen for whatever reason, so I didn't see you. Okay. Sorry, I'm not sure exactly. There we go. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Sandy.
No. They're bringing me to dinner.
Got it. Okay. Oh. And it shall come to pass that as all the good things are come upon you, of which the Lord your God spoke unto you, so shall the Lord bring upon you all the evil things, until he have destroyed you from off this good land, which the Lord your God hath given you. And what would bring that about? Right? When ye transgress the covenant of the Lord your God, which he commanded you, and you go off and serve other gods and worship them. Then shall the anger of the Lord be kindled against you, and ye shall perish quickly from off the good land which he hath given unto you. Right? So this is sounding, I'm sorry to keep stressing this, but this is sounding again very Deuteronomistic, right? If you obey, everything's going to be great. If you disobey, right, forget it, right? It's all going to go south. All right. So reactions to this besides Sandy's.
Well, maybe it worked 2,000 years ago or 2,700 years ago or whatever.
A long time ago.
Yeah. I mean, the righteous, the people who observe as many of the commandments as the 539 or whatever it is.
613.
They rode in the same cattle cars.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. So, I mean, I think, right, that this idea, right, that obedience to God is going to ensure your safety and security, right, and your survival on the land I really don't, it's hard for me to believe, right, that even in the time of the prophets, people were believing this, right? Because, right, there's too much evidence to the contrary. And I actually think, Sandy, right, that this is one of the reasons why there is so much contradiction in the book of Joshua and in the Bible in general, right, is because there's on one hand the ideology, right, that you need to obey in order to survive and thrive. And then there's the reality, right, that I think was probably not lost on the, on the writers of the Bible, that it's not such a simple calculus, right, that things are much more complicated, right? So that is the reason for this constant sort of refrain, right? Because probably people are aware, right, that the Israelites, did not persist in the land, right? Especially when the books were finally codified, right? Clearly, this happened in the context of either exile, right, or a partial return from exile. All right, so let's. I think we will continue.
My dinner has come.
I would like us to continue to the next chapter.
Yes, exactly. So let's do that, and then we can talk. Then we can sort of talk about the book as a whole. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right. So this is remember, this is the final book in Joshua, right? And so there, you figure, right, there's going to be some sort of summation, right? And so Joshua has announced, right, that he is dying, right? And so now, not only is he going to call all of the people, which he did last time, Vayikra, now he Vayesof, right? And he gathered them all up, right? All of the tribes of Israel, and they all came to Shechem, right? And called for the elders of Israel and for their heads and for their judges. So that's very similar to the previous chapter. And for their officers. And they presented themselves before God, right? So Shechem here is where presumably this is where the Ark of the Covenant is located at this point. And Joshua said unto all the people, right? It's very interesting, right? That it's, so, and this may be metaphoric, all the people, because he's addressing all the elders and the judges and the officers and so on and so forth. But just like in Deuteronomy, right, Joshua is presented, just as Moses is there, as speaking to everyone, right, to all of the people. And thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, your fathers dwelt of old time beyond the river, even Terach, right? So we're going back to what? We're going back to the book of Genesis, right? We're going to do Joshua's going to give us a review of our history, right? So even Terach, the father of Abraham and the father of Nahor, and they served other gods. Right? And I took your father Abraham from beyond the river and led him throughout all the land of Canaan and multiplied his seed, and I gave him Isaac. And I gave unto Isaac Jacob and Esau, and I gave unto Esau Mount Seir to possess it, and Jacob and his children went down into Egypt. And I sent Moses and Aaron, and I plagued Egypt according to that which I did in the midst thereof, and afterward I brought you out. And I brought your fathers out of Egypt, and ye came, and ye came unto the sea, and the Egyptians pursued after your fathers with chariots and with horsemen unto the Red Sea. And when they cried out unto the Lord, he put darkness between you and the Egyptians, and brought the sea upon them, and covered them, and your eyes saw what I did in Egypt, and ye dwelt in the wilderness many days. And I brought you into the land of the Amorites that dwelt beyond the Jordan, and they fought with you. And I gave them into your hand, and ye possessed their land, and I destroyed them from before you. Then Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, arose and fought against Israel, and he sent and called Balaam, the seer of Beor, to curse you. But I wouldn't hearken until Balaam. Go ahead, Suzanne.
No, keep going, please.
Oh, you're just waiting. Okay, yeah. But I would not hearken unto Balaam. Therefore, even he blessed you. So I delivered you out of his hand. And he went over the Jordan and came unto Jericho. And the men of Jericho fought against you, the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Girgashite and the Hivite and the Jebusite. And I delivered them into your hand. Although I think the Jebusites he didn't deliver into their hands. I think the Jebusites were the ones in Jerusalem. And I sent the hornet before you, which drove them out before you, even the two kings of the Amorites, not with thy sword, nor with thy bow. And I gave you a land whereon thou hadst not labored, and cities which ye built not, and ye dwell therein. Of vineyards and olive yards which ye planted not, do ye eat. And very interesting, right? That God is focused here, and God/Joshua, right, is focused on the fact that that this was a gift, right? This was a gift to the people. They didn't have to work to get it, right? Now, therefore, fear the Lord. I'm sorry about my computer, everybody. It really is very frustrating. Now, therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served beyond the river, right, and in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord. And if it seems evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom ye shall serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. All right.
Who's
So
speaking
what do
then?
This is, well, it's very interesting. Sandy, that was actually going to be one of my questions. Who is talking here?
The high priest.
Yeah, well, it's presented, right, as Joshua, right? Joshua, who is sort of in the place of Moses, right? So he's the one who has, maybe doesn't have face-to-face relationship with God, but he's God's closest confidant now that Moses is gone, right? But it seems very strange, right? Because there's a lot of I here, right? There's a lot of first person, and clearly it's not Joshua, right, who took Abraham and so on and so forth, right? So he clearly says, thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, right? But there is clearly, right, so that's fine up until verse 7, right? But then we see that it seems to be in verse 7 that it's actually Joshua speaking, right? Because he talks about God in the third person, right, before it shifts back to the first person, right? So it seems to go back and forth between first and third person. So presumably Joshua is the speaker, sometimes talking in the name of God and sometimes speaking about God.
Okay.
All right. So reactions to this version of the history. The question would be, what's here and what's not here? Right. That seems important.
The second command, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And
Yes.
that there can be
Right.
other gods that you occasionally sacrifice to, as long as you put me first. And now
Yeah.
is, I gather, saying that doesn't work anymore.
Right.
And I have to, this is a very sacrilegious thought, I know, but he's talking about in verse 4, he gave Isaac, Jacob, and Esau, and he gave unto Esau Mount Seir to possess it. What would have happened if God had exposed fraud? And
If God had
Esau,
what?
if God had exposed the
Oh.
fraud, and Esau had gained his rightful place as the elder son. I'm sorry, I have thoughts like this occasionally.
Yeah, no, I think those are very important thoughts. I mean, I think
if God is so great, why did he allow this to happen?
Because there would be no
why did he allow what to
story.
happen?
It needs to happen that way.
How did he allow Jacob to trick his father?
Right. I mean, the short answer, right, would be that was what God really wanted, right? I mean, I think that part of the point of the book of Genesis, right, is that it's in many ways it's a very iconoclastic book, not least of all in sort of subverting the notion that primogeniture is the most important, right? Very often it's the weakest character that becomes the most important, right? Again and again, the strong are undone by the weak, and that is seen as appropriate in the book of Genesis. So it's so I, and the second son becomes more important than the first. Or like it, in the story of Judah and Tamar, Tamar is shown to be more righteous than Judah, right? And so that's there's a lot of those types of reversals there. Suzanne, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say what you said, but you said it, so that's great.
Okay. All right, great. So very interesting. What is not, I guess one of the questions is what's not here?
The whole idea that the people who are killed, it's outrageous. He's being very generous with everybody else's land.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the violence, right, against Egypt, right, and the violence against Egypt, the violence against the people who were living in the land of Canaan at that time, right? All that is there, right? But what one of the things that I see that's not in this, right, is any of the sins of the people, right? It's a very capsule history, right? It's all very positive from the point of view of the Israelites, right? So we hear about the Exodus from Egypt, right? But we don't hear about the golden calf, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Naomi said, "Oh, it's all about the second commandment, right? You should have no other God before me, right?" But it's actually interesting, right? Is that unlike the previous chapter, right? This speech doesn't talk about the Torah, right? It doesn't talk about any of the. It doesn't talk about the covenant, right? That the Israelites have to follow, right? It basically seems to be only about God's promises to Israel, right? Which is a very different kind of emphasis.
Hello? Yes?
Oh, sorry.
Can I talk? Can I say something? Please?
Please.
Thank you. This is a history. This is a capsule. He's talking to everybody. He says, remember this and remember that and remember that. He's not saying you guys were bad, you did this. It's like, this is the order, not of service, but this is the order. This is what happened. I want you to remember this. I'm dying.
Yes.
I'm talking to everybody. Everybody isn't of the same ability to remember. So I'm giving you a capsulized version of what happened. And that's what this is. And then we need to see what happens in the remaining verses.
Right. I mean, I think what's interesting about what you're saying, which I completely agree with, right, is that just in the previous chapter, right, we had a similar kind of summation, right, but that summation was about, was much more complicated, right? It had this sort of notion, right, that you need to be really strong in order to follow the Torah of Moses. And if you don't follow the Torah of Moses, you're going to be wiped off this land the way that I wiped these other idolaters off the land, right? And I think you're absolutely right, Suzanne, that here, right, it's a much different sort of mode, right? It's almost like it's a different ceremony, right? It's like a, as you say, right, it's like a ritualized history hitting only the high points.
Right. I mean,
and I think
in the previous chapter it was, if you do this, fine. If you don't do that, fine. Clearly,
right.
God has a lot of patience, a lot more patience than people do. And
Yeah.
clearly, people didn't follow everything. And yet,
Yeah.
God is still doing all of this good stuff. And
Right.
so in this chapter, it is, and this is the good stuff that he did, and this is what you're supposed to
Yes.
remember.
Right. Right. And notice in verse 7, right, that that the only thing that God says about wandering in the wilderness, right, is that you dwelt in the wilderness many days. No explanation as to why, right? No explanation as to, why did it take 40 years and an entire generation, right? There is, and this is very common in the Torah, right, where the you, right, encompasses, it, as though the same generation had been, from, I took your fathers out of Egypt, but then ye dwelt in the wilderness many days, right? No explanation as to why, right? And then in this case, right, it actually is you are the ones, right, who I brought into the land of the Amorites, and so on and so forth. All right. So unless there are other comments, I think we'll move on.
Please.
If I can get my computer to do that. All right, but at the end, right, at the end of this whole thing, right, we get back to what we need to do, right? So I'm giving you all this stuff, and now this is what's on the other side. Now, therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord, right? And basically here it's like you got to choose. Right? You got to choose. Are you going to serve those gods or are you going to serve me? Right? And here this does feel to be, this 14 and 15 really seem to be from Joshua, right? Right. But as for me, Joshua and my house, right, we will serve the Lord. And the people answered and said, far be it from us that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. For the Lord our God, he it is that brought us and our fathers up out of the land of Egypt and from the house of bondage, and that did those great signs in our sight and preserved us in all the way wherein we went and among all the peoples through the midst of whom we passed. And the Lord...
The building emergency condition has been cleared. You may return to your normal activities. The building emergency has been cleared. You may return to your normal activities.
There was no emergency.
I apologize. They've got so many troubles with this fire alarm system today. All right. All right. And the Lord drove out from before us all the peoples, even the Amorites that dwelt in the land. Therefore, we also will serve the Lord, for he is our God. Okay. And Joshua said unto the people, and this is very interesting, right? Ye cannot serve the Lord, for he is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your transgressions nor your sins if ye forsake the Lord and serve strange gods. Then he will turn and do you evil and consume you. After that, he hath done you good. Right. So basically, you can't have it both ways, right? You can't serve God and serve other gods, because serving other gods is forsaking this God. And Joshua said unto the people, and the people said unto Joshua, nay, but we will serve the Lord. And Joshua said unto the people, ye are witnesses against yourself, right? Edim atem bachem, right? That ye have chosen you, the Lord, right? Or I would maybe translate it, because you have chosen for yourself the Lord, right, to serve him. And they said, yes, we are witnesses, right? And I love this verse, right, because it emphasizes, right, that, even though, of course, we have in Judaism, right, the notion of the Jews being the chosen people, right, at the heart of that, right, is the people choosing themselves, right? So it's the people, in a sense, who choose, right? So, right. So, I'm sorry, I've lost my place here. Ki atem
24.
bichartem lachem, right? Go ahead, Cindy.
No, I have a different book, and it says, "From the people said unto Joshua, the Lord our God will we serve, and unto his voice will we hearken." Now, you know my feeling. If they're choosing and accepting this as the Lord having given them that. But he's giving away somebody else's stuff, like the land.
Yeah, right.
So
I mean,
he's
this
very
is,
generous with the other people's possessions.
I mean, I think what the Bible, or Joshua, or the character of God would respond to you, right? They would say the land ultimately belongs to God, right? The God, it's sort of like, that God ultimately decides who gets to live where, right? Just because God gave the land to the Amorites for a while, now he's giving it to the Israelites, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Presumably because the Amorites worship
They
false
don't
gods.
own it. God
Right.
owns it. They don't own it.
Right. Exactly. We don't own it. God owns it. Right. And that's a very important, and I think these days, right, that's a very important principle in the Jewish take on environmental justice, right? That it's not our land to despoil, right? It's our land to protect. It's our land to steward. We get one earth, and if we don't take care of it, right, there's no second earth for us to go to. And so this, so that, and again, right, that, and I do think that this is very important, right, that obviously, each individual person maybe has limited influence, limited power in the world, but we each choose what we're going to do. We each choose how we're going to behave, and those choices have real meaning. And so, and we are, right, this is an appropriate type of verse to read as we're going through the month of Elul and preparing for the high holidays, right? Because we generally tend to be the only real witnesses for of our misdeeds. I mean, obviously, sometimes some of us do really bad things to other people too, but a lot of what we do that's not so positive has to do with what we do to ourselves, right? And so we are sort of we are often the only witnesses to that. And so we need to, pay attention to that and choose, I hope, to treat ourselves, especially these days, right? In COVID times, it's very difficult sometimes to figure out how to be good to ourselves when we have to be alone in our apartment so much. So now, therefore, put away the strange gods which are among you, and incline your heart unto the Lord, the God of Israel. The Hatu et levavchem el Adonai Elohei Yisrael. And the people said unto Joshua, the Lord our God we will serve, and unto his voice we will hearken. So Joshua made a covenant, right? So here is the covenant, Vayikrot Yehoshua Brit La'am. Right? So Joshua made a covenant with or for the people that day and set them a statute and an ordinance in Shechem. And Joshua wrote these words in the book of the law of God, and he took a great stone and he set it up there under the oak that was by the sanctuary of the Lord. And Joshua said unto all the people, there we go. Behold, this stone shall be a witness against us. For it hath heard all the words of the Lord which he spoke unto us. It shall be therefore a witness against you, yet ye deny lest ye deny your God. So Joshua sent the people away, every man unto his inheritance. And it came to pass after these things that Yehoshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, he died, being 110 years old. And they buried him in the border of his inheritance in Timnath Serach, which is in the hill country of Ephraim, on the north of the mountain of Gaash. And Israel served the Lord all the days of Joshua, and all the days of the elders that outlived Joshua, and had known all the work of the Lord that he had wrought for Israel. And the bones of Joseph, which the children of Israel brought up out of Egypt, buried they in Shechem, and in the parcel of ground which Jacob bought of the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of silver, and they became the inheritance of the children of Joseph. And Eleazar, the son of Aaron, died, and they buried him in the hill of Pinchas his son, which was given him in Mount Ephraim. So we have at the end of the book of Joshua, right, we have this wonderful sort of scene of the passing of a generation, right, of Joshua and Eleazar, right, passing away, and all the elders that outlived Joshua, right, and we're going to be going into a new generation in the book of Judges, right, which will be, again, a very much more complicated time for Israel. But interesting, right, that at the very end of the book of Joshua, right, we are reintroduced to the bones of Joseph. Right? So in the book of Genesis, right, Joseph makes his brothers or his sons, I forget which it is, makes them swear that they will bring his bones out of Egypt. Right, it will not be buried there. Rather, he will be buried with his father. Right, and at the end of the book of it makes a point in the book of Exodus that Moses brought the bones. Right, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but it strikes me that maybe they were mentioned again at some point in the book of Joshua already, but here they definitely are mentioned, right? That somehow there's a this is sort of the final closing of the book of, almost the final closing of the books of the Torah, right? Because everyone has passed away except now, it seems, Pinchas, right? Who is the son of Eleazar and who appears now to be the high priest, at least for now.
Yeah, they all died, but nobody passes away.
Right, okay, fine. They all died. They've all died.
Euphemisms don't work.
But the reason I chose that word, Sandy, is not so much because I'm using it as a euphemism, right? But because I'm using it as about a generation, right? That the generation is gone, right? And so that the generation passes the baton, right? There's a new generation that will come up, right? We aren't introduced to them here, right? We don't know who they are except for Pinchas, right? We just know that this generation has died out, and that's how the book of Joshua ends, right? That there's a sort of air of finality, and I think that this is one of the reasons why there is this kind of tradition, right? That the book of Joshua is in some weird kind of a way the sixth book of the Torah, even though obviously it's not, right? There's 5 books of the Torah, but there are many biblical scholars who sometimes talk about the Hexateuch rather than the Pentateuch, right? The 6 books of Moses rather than not of Moses, but the 6 books of the Torah rather than the 5 books of the Torah, because there are so many allusions, right? So many connections between what happens in the Torah and what happens in the book of Joshua. And also, I think because the book of Joshua is seen as sort of a fulfillment of what's promised in the Torah. So anyway, so before we close, I just want to open the floor for any reactions. We've spent a lot of time, many months on the book of Joshua. It's been, I have to say to this group, but I would love to be able to say it to all the people that we've studied with over the months, that it's been incredibly illuminating to read this with you all. And so I'm very grateful to everyone who's here and everyone who participated over the course of this extended study. So, but other reflections I would love to hear.
Thank you. I'm happy that we read the whole book and didn't just take pieces here and there. I'm happy to have read this whole book. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Out of curiosity, how many sons, is it known how many sons Aaron had?
Aaron had 4 sons, 2 of whom died.
2 got incinerated.
Who died in the story that precedes the Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
Right, died by bringing the strange fire, and then Eleazar and I want to say Itamar. But Eleazar is the one who becomes the priest, and then Pinchas after him.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know what happens there. Yeah, go ahead, Ellen. You have to unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself, Ellie.
Rabbi Jim, what are we doing next week?
So that is a good question. I like that question. We've discussed a few ideas, and I'm still open to suggestions. We've talked about switching to another book of the Bible, and reading it in a similarly intensive way. We could do something along the lines of what we've done with the book of Samuel, right? Which is to read it not quite right. We basically spent today we did 2 chapters, but we've basically been doing 1 chapter a week. So I think we spent probably almost half a year on the book of Joshua, once you count up the weeks I was on vacation and the weeks that we did something for a holiday or whatever. So that's a long time to do one topic. So we could do another book of the Bible, but read it more quickly. And or we can just sort of focus on individual chapters, right? Not try to do whole books. And then also we could go back to the kind of the format that we had before, right? Which would be, sort of a mix of sometimes doing Torah study, the Torah portion of the week, and sometimes doing other materials, whether they be Midrash or Talmud or other Jewish themes. So I'm very open. Suzanne had a suggestion, I think.
I voted on the book of the Bible.
Well, I'm sorry, everybody. One person at a time. So first Suzanne.
Thank you. I would like to read the book of Judges, and I would like to read it in the same way that we read the book of Joshua.
Okay.
Not read it on our own, not just discuss it, not go back to the old way of a piece of this and a piece of that. I think this was great. There were a couple of people missing today who were involved in most of the time, a few people. What's our hurry? I mean,
I don't have any
hurry.
hurry.
It's not like a course for the curriculum that we have to accomplish a certain amount of material in a certain amount of time. Right. That's what I would like to do. So
I'd like to do another book of the Bible.
Yeah, the book. Yeah, so Suzanne is talking about doing it from the book of Judges. Naomi, what do you have a sense what you'd like to do?
I think the idea of going through an entire book. Again, I have not been in this regularly, but I think the idea of doing an entire book is a very good one.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say that my appreciation for the Bible as a whole has really increased as a result of being so focused on a single book of it. I feel that the way that, you know, I sort of see how the book of Joshua is sort of responding in a way to various parts of the Torah, I thought was really just fascinating and gave me a much greater sort of, I guess, just a much deeper connection to it. So I think, though, that next week, by next week, we'll already be close enough to the high holidays that maybe what we'll do is we'll do some high holiday stuff next week and the week after, and we'll start the Book of Judges in a couple of weeks, so that we can so that we're not like starting the Book of Judges and then stopping for 2 or 3 weeks for the holidays and then coming back to it and having forgotten everything that we read the first week. So I think we'll probably do some we'll probably do some Elul stuff, and then of course as soon as we have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, then we'll have Sukkot, and so I think once Sukkot is over, we'll start with the Book of Judges.
I vote for a book of the Bible.
Okay, great.
Got it.
Good, I like that.
All right.
And
Sounds
until
good.
we get to that, I think some midrash would be nice.
Yes,
Some
that's great,
midrash.
and I'm very, very happy to do Midrash. And the fact of the matter is, Sandy, that I'm not, I'm not as familiar with the Midrashim about the prophetic books as I am with the Midrashim on the books of the Torah. But those Midrashim certainly exist. So I will attempt, to be sensitive to the fact that, we do have an interest in the Midrashim and where appropriate, trying to bring them when we're discussing the Book of Judges. Because there's a lot of amazing stories in the Book of Judges that I can only imagine that there's midrashic material about it that would be equally interesting.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Sounds
Thank you.
good. All right. All
Thank
right. So Yasher Koach, may we go from strength to strength. Congratulations on completing. And so next week everyone should have a cookie or a pie or a bottle of schnapps or something, and we can we'll make a little toast to having finished the book of Joshua right on time, right before we are plunged into the morass of the high holidays. So, all right. So good, everybody.
Okay.
Have a great week. I'll see you soon.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
You too. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Naomi.